Next we have Eugene. Sorry, Eugene, that's right.
Eugene.
Okay, for some reason I always get it mixed up with something else. Eugene, who's a volunteer, as he told you at the beginning, at Free Geek Toronto. And they've been recently have put in a SugarCRM implementation for managing donors. And he also works with SugarCRM in his personal work as well. So if you're interested, if that's a tool you're interested in, he's a good person to talk to. And we also have Bradley, who is from Dancemakers, and they are using Sumac. So if we could start with Jamie, and you could just give, maybe I've already said what system you use, but just a brief introduction of how long you've been using it, kind of high-level story.
Sure. So I work at a small youth organization in Toronto. We got introduced to Salesforce, I'd say in September was when we first applied for our licenses. Just to give a little bit of context, we're not even close to being fully up and running, but we are using Salesforce on a more regular basis now. But like Brian was saying, like the process, just to figure it all out, takes forever. So we still use a lot of other tools, but we've started to migrate more over to Salesforce. So I can definitely help answer a lot of questions for people who are interested in the program.
Okay. Free Geek Toronto is an organization that recycles unwanted computer equipment to individuals or they're too old to the trash, well, to recycling depots. They get torn out. Now, SugarCRM, we've actually been using it since about August last year. And I actually started volunteering there around that same time. We needed someone just to call up people for asking for donations of equipment. So I asked them, do you have anything to track these calls and who they are? Because I didn't want to do it in paper, and being a computer organization, you think they have something. No, they didn't. So I volunteered to see what I can find. Now my background is in IT, many years. I've actually designed CRMs in the past, so I had a good idea what would work. And basic philosophy of Free Geek is open source software as much as possible. So that's one criteria I was looking for. And I came across Sugar plus Salesforce and a couple others. Sugar I picked that because open source, web-based, database was MySQL, PHP programming, meant that it could be used by us and can also be customized. And it was fairly easy to get up and going because we had the computer technology and the knowledge there to actually get up and going very easy. That part and training, actually using it, was fairly quick. We started calling people, keeping track of people. And you can send out emails. They can keep emails associated with people when you send them out, and when they come back, they can be linked to people. So that was another nice feature of it. I really liked that. Something I looked for in the past. So we've been using it. At this point in time, I'm not sure completely how far along it. There's a lot more to Sugar that can be used, and I'm looking at that part of it now to see there is mail campaign within it. It can be integrated with websites Brian was mentioning about. There's different ways of using it. And there's so many free options or modules available to add into it also.
Can you repeat the question again? Just what the oversight was? There's so much in there. I'm like, what was the focus of the
Your organization, what system are you using, and just the very brief history of how long have you been using
Sure.
it?
And I apologize, I've been coughing. I'm just getting over a cold, so I'm not normally this nasal either. So I'm with Dancemaker. We're a contemporary dance organization. We're an arts organization. I did not I wasn't a part of the process of choosing Sumac. It was there. Peter, how long have we had it for? You cut it 3 years ago.
About 3 years. Yeah.
So it's a process of here's Sumac and engaging with it. And my experience with it has been, it's good. I think the most frustrating thing that I can think of, and hopefully through this process of talking and engaging this, is having a really strong tool and then not making it work for you and not flexing its muscles for you. And that's kind of my experience with, I came to Dancemakers with a history of usage of CRM's databases. I was using FileMaker Pro in the Edinburgh Festival Fringe for 3 years. And I was very lucky that I had an artistic director at a fringe venue that was like, no, we're using this before I think a lot of organizations actually realized what they could do. So I was very much implanted in these processes and being efficient as possible. So then I think my personal experience with Sumac is really taking the time to explore it and think about, what do I hate doing? What sucks about like these processes, or how many volunteer hours do we have? Brad, we got to use that for a grant. You know, and you're looking through little tab notes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, this sucks. So, you know, and then it was really an engagement of things sucking and me looking for solutions through Sumac to make those things work for us. And that's been a really positive process for me throughout the entire year and a quarter or so that I've been working with it. So I think there's still things I can do, and I think I feel very fortunate working at Dancemakers. My roommate has the exact same answer. I just thought of it right now. And I think what's really cool about Sumac, and this beneficiary of us, the joke is we're in the dance belt in Parliament and Distiller District all the way through to Parliament and Winchester Street. And there's a lot of different organizations that use Sumac in our area, and we kind of, you know, I cheat and I ask them about stuff, and they ask me about stuff, and it's cool that way that we find solutions for each other. So I guess to sum up, my relationship has been what sucks, what can I do better, be more efficient, and finding ways Sumac can do that for us. And it's an ongoing relationship. It's like a good marriage.
So to give us a bit of background, I think you weren't involved in choosing it, and you've covered that. Jamie, can you give a little more details on your organization, the process of choosing Salesforce? Were you considering different options? What led you to Salesforce?
So I'd say about maybe a year and a half ago, we all stopped and we were like, wow, we don't have any donor management, we don't have a database, we don't have any way that we can all access centralized information together. And with funding drying up, it was really important that we started to continue these relationships and like really start to steward those people that were supporting our organization. So one of the girls that we work with was actually, she had developed the FileMaker Pro systems. So we were like, oh yeah, FileMaker Pro. So we started using some training wheel programs that would help us develop FileMaker. That was when we realized that it was going to cost us probably close to $30,000 to implement it. And the not-for-profit sector, that doesn't exist. It's very rare to get that kind of funding to build your structure. So I started researching, and that was when I found Salesforce. It was free, it was easy, it was cloud computing, so I kind of talked to my team about it, and we said, you know what, let's just go for it. Let's see what happens, it's free, what can we lose? So that was when we got Salesforce. And then we started talking to other not-for-profits, and we started to realize that other people were using it. So we started to see what they were doing, and we're like, oh my gosh, the possibilities are really endless with this program. So we said, you know what, let's just give it a shot, and let's just go for it. We hired a consultant, just to give us the rundown of what Salesforce was, really help us build up our database, and it was awful. It was the worst experience ever. It was actually traumatizing. He totally just... It was awful. He totally just ruined all of our data, just made a mess of our Salesforce, and it was, that. And so we just kind of gave up on it. We're like, you know what, we're too busy, let's just leave it. So we left it for a month or two, and then there was a Salesforce conference in San Francisco. I happened to be in California, so it just made sense. So I went to the Salesforce conference. I met a bunch of different consultants, pretty much from all over the States, Canada, that specialized in not-for-profits, and with this not-for-profit starter pack in specific. And so I started talking to some people, and that was when I really started to connect with consultants, really figure out what the power of Salesforce was. And then I came home, I was like, guys, we gotta do all of this. Like, we've met all these amazing consultants, and so that was when we really started to focus on Salesforce. We're working with consultants right now to really customize, as someone was saying. So that's kind of our history with Salesforce. And so I guess the biggest thing that I would say about Salesforce, and like Brian was talking about the processes and integrating Salesforce, is when we first got it and we went to our consultants, we're like, we need to do this, 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 and this. And then they're like, oh wow, like that's a lot. Like you guys are you sure this is what you want to do? So that was when we took a step back and we said, you know what, let's create like a 2-year plan. So we've gone way back to what we thought we could do in a month, and we've created like a couple-year plan to figure out how we can integrate it. So we listed our number one priority. So our number one priority was donor stewardship. And so right now, we're like fully trying to just all commit to increasing our donor stewardship and really using Salesforce for that. And then we'll move on to step 2. So that's kind of where we're at right now.
So do you feel like there's something looking back that you would have done differently in that initial process, or do you feel like you made a good decision and that was just, it was just that one consultant that was the problem?
Well, I think that looking back, I think it would have been really good for us to look at different CRMs, maybe not just jumping on Salesforce because it was free, but at the end of the day, it worked out in our favor. It fits all the needs of our organizations and the groups that we work with. And one thing we actually really like about Salesforce, not that I'm trying to sell anybody on it, is that they work with so many different IT programs that are already on the market. They work with a lot of tools that we already use, so they're compatible. And they're just evolving so quickly that we can't even keep up with them. So one day I'll be like, oh, I can't integrate this, and then a week later it's like, bam, it's done. It's already integrated. So it's kind of like Google. It just is moving so fast that we as consumers can't even keep up with it.
I would ask the same thing to you. Did you find that you wish there was something you had done differently in your CRM selection, or do you think you went about the right process looking back at it?
Looking back at it, it was the right decision because of the ease in which we were able to get up and going. Like from time started looking to actually getting in place with about a month. Because I installed it on my own computers first, tried it out, said, yeah, I got everything there, I'm gonna make phone calls, keep track of emails. Question,
but
she
yeah.
works with, has been.
No, I mean, I actually know that there actually still is quite a bit of controversy over kind of the CRM. Pretty much he was handling the donations and all that thing, and said, meantime, I ended up taking on volunteer management and all that, and then I'm being kind of told to, try using City CRM, which is just now wanting to do 2 CRMs at the same time, which you don't want to, I think would be a very bad idea. So I know that actually the debate at sort of our organization isn't even done, and I know there's some people who don't like the system, and other people do, and yeah.
So it sounds like part of what you're saying is that maybe it was a good fit for the donor management, but that the whole picture wasn't looked at when you initially chose it.
Well, it's hard to find one system that satisfies everything. Because we got people who are volunteers, people who are donors, and people who buy stuff from us. So we got sort of those, trying to put that in there, and really haven't taken a close look at Sugar to see if it can actually handle that sort of situation. It'd be nice if we could get, Eric has mentioned about the volunteer hours. That's something that's very unique. She spent a lot of time working on it.
Again, I just created a customized system that pretty much the entire goal was just get volunteer hours inside a database and then figure out what to transition into. So I don't know if that makes sense.
But the thing about it too is, Sugar is based in MySQL, and you designed MySQL too, database.
Well, but again, just saying something inside the same language isn't terribly helpful. It's much more complicated than that, in my opinion.
Yeah, but once data's in computer form, you can usually transfer around pretty easy.
Right, so it depends how much customization you're willing to do, basically. So speaking of customization and adapting, even if you have a system, I think everyone's talked about so far adapting it to their own organizational processes, and that's something that Ryan talked a lot about already. So maybe Bradley, you'd be a good person to start off talking about. You said this a little bit, but what were some of the examples of cases where you had to make Sumac work for your organization?
I think a really good example is just it's the depth of knowledge you can capture, and I think it's funny because I can almost address one of the question you just spoke to. It's like, no, I didn't really have a choice in choosing what I did, and if you could go back, what would you do? If I could go back and talk to one of my predecessors at the least, I would make them learn the system better. I think sometimes this stuff can appear to be dry, and it can appear to be a little lifeless, but if you understand the depth of what this stuff can do for you, then you can get psyched and excited about, wow, I can get this out of it. And I think, and I can talk on behalf of the entire arts community in Canada. I've been made their arbiter. And sometimes they get turned off by this stuff. I don't know why. But do not allow that to happen. I'm sure, I'm not gonna, I use a particular system, and Peter's here to represent it. At the end of the day, I use my system best as I can. I really don't give a rip which one you use, but what I care about are people being efficient and using it wisely. And sorry, just quickly talk about this, because I think it's really important. Take the time to learn the damn system, because then going back, I would have told my predecessors, when you start using the information capturing donor information, like subcategorize it. Use like my pledge donations, my individual campaigns that I do. Because if they don't realize, like, oh, I wish I had better information about my donors, like, well, it's all there, just set it up better. And now I'm like, ooh, look at all this great information we can look at and how we can compare information. So now I'm just segueing into your main question, how do I use it? And that's a very good example. We have different campaigns every year, and we do things differently. We have a similar donor base that we target, but we know that certain donors, we asked for money with a particular campaign in mind. And then there may be a secondary campaign that we ask for later in the summer. And then we can use that, so I captured information, who donated what for those different things, and then we can start letting the numbers tell a story. Well, these people only give once a year and it's around tax time. These people give twice a year. And it shows, I'm like, what does that tell me about that person? And it tells me that they're a consistent donor and they're committed to what we do no matter what the cause. It's like, give me a cause, any cause of Dancemaker, so I'll eat it up. And then fundamentally, that's the information I want to capture. And then this is the art of what we do, is I tailor that message to them. So I know this donor loves the hell out of our spring campaigns because we always have fun events. We do parties and the dancers come out and do that. So I know when I write to them, I can say, look, these are our dancers are going to be here. We're going to be previewing new work. And that's how they respond. It's one message does not work with all constituents. And again, I can talk about a number of things, but for the sake of brevity, donors, looking at how people donate and subcategorizing donations and stuff, to be able to capture that information, it allows me to be creative and write to those people and connect with them on an emotional level.
Did you have a question?
Oh, yeah, I just want to ask you, with, I went on a tour of Sumac, and it has amazing ability to sort of slice and dice your different constituencies.
And diagrams, baby.
Oh, I love that. But with that ability, how do you cover your whole constituency base when you want to start crafting messages? Because, I guess you could divide it up into 10 types of tailored messages or 5 tailored messages. 4 was our last campaign.
Okay. 4 different messages. That's really knowing your audience. I mean, it's being on the ground, boots on the ground. We're a small enough organization that we have that connection with people. I used to work for Luminato, and if Janice Price was making those decisions, she wouldn't know what to do because it's just too big of an organization. There's too many hands doing different things. But with us, we're lucky that we're small enough that we have, like, we drink beer with them after the shows, and we go and see shows with them in it, and we communicate with them. I work very hard to say thank you and write and keep communications with our donors, and that's the whole. I can talk about how to develop donations and have a good fundraising program. It's totally different. 5 weeks. But I think with us, it's our gut, and it's knowing how we develop our own language. Dancemakers has its own tone. When we write, we have a certain flavor to how we write, and it's keeping that consistent, and it's communicating to different people that way. If that answers your question. It's knowing your people.
How easy or hard was implementation? Were there issues? And the other thing is, have you ordered additional modules, and did that, implementation of different modules, did that go off seamlessly, or was there?
I can't comment on the first one because I wasn't part of the implementation.
Okay.
But it works fine for me. Everything is fine. I'm not here to champion, but I'll state something about Sumac that I enjoy using, is that it allows you to batch, like bulk change things about constituents. So I can select a whole group of people and change one particular thing. It's not about going, Stan's, click, done. Next person, click, click, done. Like there are, like, you know, I don't have to go in each individual and click individual things about them to change something. I can bulk, I can make sweeping bulk choices or changes. So Peter can talk about that later. Please ask Peter about that because he can do it way more articulately than I can right now. You know what, we've been fine so far with the modules we've been using. I've been trying to maximize or wax the most out of those as possible. But it's also a time thing too with me. I think it's my summer, it's my downtime for me, so I'm gonna start playing with stuff. Which I did talk to you about earlier, but I just never had the time to develop it in terms of some of the educational learning stuff we do. But ask me in 5 months.
Did they treat you well though? You got good support?
Yes. Peter's always a phone call away. And Peter's really responsive, and I think he does a great job with the connectivity and stuff. So.
Can I just make a really quick comment? On the subject of implementation, a typical implementation time from the time you say you want Sumac till you're up and running with all your data in the database live is 4 weeks. That's typical. Okay, we've done it in one. Some have taken 3 or 4 months, but 4 weeks is typical. That's with training.
So Eugene, same question basically. What are some of the ways in which you adapted SugarCRM to meet your organization's needs?
I haven't adapted too much. It was fairly easy to add in some new, I guess, yes/no choices for things like which the donor was providing funding or giving people help or equipment or some sort of provider of services. Things like notes, there wasn't really a space for that, so easy to add that in is another field. Some people want a home phone number. That was easy to add in. They have a built-in module that you can add in new fields pretty easy. So we haven't implemented any modules that were available. The other day I did download a thing called Sucker Reports. In the free version of Sugar, there is no reporting capability in it. That's our add-on in the paid version. But there is this module called Sucker Reports that is free. But the manual for it costs $70 Canadian. So they will get you one way or the other. I haven't had a chance to really look at it, but it looks promising. You can export the information fairly easy in terms of the Excel spreadsheet type of idea, and then if you know what to do with it, you can get reports from that. So it's fairly flexible. Getting information into it was fairly easy. We took Excel spreadsheet and took it in without too much trouble. But again, I have an IT background, so that was fairly easy for me to do.
So we were originally just using Salesforce out of the box. When we created our database, that was like our first need. So it worked fine for that. We had no problems. We didn't, And then, so we've added on a couple modules since. Our biggest investment was probably creating like a donor management system. So it tracks all of our donations, all of our donors. We can pull reports really easily so we can see who our biggest donors are. And it's just all like a simple click of a button. We have customized reports based on our needs. So what we really need to figure out, so like how many people are donating monthly, how many people are donating our one-time donors, and all that kind of information. Another, I guess, module that goes inside of that is in reflective to what you were saying about the letters. So you can get different programs. We have one called Kaga Composer that works with Salesforce, and it basically has all of our templated letters. So we can just easily click on someone, click on the letter, and it would automatically send it out. We have automated ones, so when we put in a donor, let's say I put in a donation, if it's just a one-time donor, I can implement it, and then I can just hit tax receipt, and it will automatically sync with that, send it out, and it just saved me a lot of time and effort. And then, as Jane was mentioning, so a program we used was Vertical Response, and so it's just now integrated into it. Same with MailChimp, that's what we were using, but we just migrated strictly to vertical response because it's more compatible. Sorry, you had a question?
What were you migrating from?
We didn't have anything. We had Excel.
Yeah.
We originally used HighRise, which is just an online database program because we used Basecamp, so they kind of went together. But we took all that data, we pulled it into Excel, and then at that point, everyone just kind of started adding their own donor or adding their own information in their own computers, so their own address books and our Macs. So we just pulled everyone's information out of their address books, and then it was just a simple upload into Salesforce. So it's a pretty easy migration. Yeah.
Well, I wanted to ask what other programs your organizations are using. 'Cause right now we have most of our contacts in MailChimp because we email them.
So do we.
We actually are primarily membership-based, and we have most of our membership in QuickBooks because we invoice them. And then we have a various other lists. It would be nice to pull it all together, but do you still use different pieces of software like this?
I do right now, just because we're not finished our migration. So for example, I do use MailChimp, but I do also use Salesforce, and the two are compatible. Sorry, go ahead.
So I was just going to add that if you use QuickBooks, QuickBooks will integrate with Salesforce as well.
So you would still use it in QuickBooks and it would?
Yes, we could export information from QuickBooks into Salesforce quite easily.
So yeah, so as Jane was saying, so the same thing with MailChimp. So I just click the Salesforce button, it automatically re-uploads my list, it updates it all, and then I can just do my quick send
Like a sync?
Yeah, they're completely synced. And that was one selling feature and why we stuck to Salesforce is because it does work with so many programs that people already use. We use programs like Smartsheet. We've developed our own website on Weebly. And so, yeah, we find everything kind of works pretty easily together.
So maybe we'll just wrap up with one last question. Just one thing that's a challenge for you. We've talked a lot about why all your systems are awesome, but just because we're trying to give an honest perspective here. One thing about your system that you find challenging, and maybe we can go back this way again if you don't mind answering again, Jamie.
Oh, yeah, sure. I think my biggest challenge is getting everyone to use Salesforce every day. So because I run our IT project, I'm like on Salesforce all the time, like putting in my tasks, my meetings, everything. But I think the biggest thing is getting my ED and my MD and our program staff like on there all the time. So as someone mentioned, if you don't do it, then it's just gonna plummet. So for me, that's the biggest thing, that's the biggest challenge right now. And we're also running into a problem with costs. To be honest, things are starting to cost a lot more than we anticipated. So we've really had to slow down our process. You know, we have to apply for grants in between, and it's
When you say cost, you mean cost of using Salesforce?
cost to customize.
Oh.
So we'll be like, oh, you know, it'd be really awesome, and we know Salesforce can do it. Is like having this, but then we look at it and we're like, so $5,000 later, we're not at that point yet. So I think that's one of our biggest things right now, and we're in a really big transition. So our processes keep changing as well, and our needs keep changing, so we just have to be flexible to that as well.
Those costs, are they for the like additional modules or whatever, or are they cost to the consultant? Like what's costing more?
So it depends on what you want to do. So some modules cost money, some don't. For us, we bought a module that came with consultants. So we've been working with them, but then they're also able to customize other things beyond just that module. So it's just trying to balance everything, and then we also see what other people have done with Salesforce, and we're like, how do we do that too? So yeah, it's just trying to balance out, like really fine tuning what your needs are so that you're not wasting money. Because I think that's the biggest thing you can do.
So certainly some consultant costs as well as the...
Yeah, I mean, you could have someone in-house that could learn it. It will take you a lot longer. But we've hired initial consultants, and now I'm just pretty much learning how to do more stuff on my own. So just investment of time.
Our challenge is, like Eric has mentioned, we have a couple of silos of information of users groups, so people, and seeing how we can integrate them into just one set is our challenge.
I mean, the other challenge that I really perceive is, I personally don't think that we've organized our information to the point that it can even be put into a CRM, and there's kind of many things that kind of aren't, I mean, at this point, like, you know, aren't getting fixed in terms of kind of data because it's not worth fixing, and it's kind of, yeah, I mean, we're almost not at the point, I think we're mature enough to actually really use a CRM effectively.
But we've got that start there, for collecting information.
Then, no, there's a great deal of controversy over this approach.
Right, so all the pre-work that goes into before the CRM of cleaning up your data and deciding on your processes and what data, how you're going to organize it, and architecture, stuff like that.
I found using Sugar, like I use Sugar for myself, and I found that it's very, I use Skype also, and I found that Skype understands phone numbers no matter what you put, the format you put them in, which is nice, and that Sugar is flexible that way. You know, as one person puts it in one way, another person puts it in a different way. Things like Skype is going to pick it up very easy. So that's kind of nice thing about it. This controversy, like getting that into a computer format, that's the key thing. After that, you can manipulate it any which way you want.
I'm a hypocrite for saying this. I just said, like, you know your systems and learn it. My personal thing right now is I want to get, just like I said before, I want to get more efficient with the Sumac. The Sumac has this grow your own thing where you can kind of customize your own thing, like you can build it yourself within the Sumac front foundation. And I've just been kind of lazy about growing my own. I want to use one for our studio rentals. And I know there's another company down the hallway from us that's doing that, and I'm just like, oh, they're doing it. And I'm just like, okay, Brad, do it. And it's like, you get busy and then get distracted, so just taking the time to learn that a little bit. But I think a bigger one, and this isn't just a Sumac thing, but it's keeping your data relevant and making sure it's clean and it's current and workable is, I think that's, I'm sure we can all comment to that, but that's, I think, a big challenge is just making sure it's correct and it's usable and, old data sucks. We pay money for letters to be sent out and they get returned to sender, and it's just, I don't know how to solve that problem. That's just a lot of work. But yeah, it's unfortunate, but it happens.
So yeah, questions?
Would you guys say your CRM costs are within that 4 to 7% that was mentioned earlier?
I can't respond to that because I don't know the accounting. I don't deal with that level of stuff. So I'm thinking so. We don't pay a lot. Again, talk to Peter about that stuff.
It depends, like, I mean, you commented that you picked Salesforce because it was free, and your biggest problem is cost overruns, thousands of dollars in cost overruns, right? It depends on what you would consider in the cost. Like, I know the cost of Sumac is nowhere near 4 to 7%, it's not even close.
Yeah.
But there are other costs. And what is your staff time? If it takes staff time to figure out how to do something, how do you charge for that? Well, you don't. It's not an explicit cost. There's no money going out of your organization to figure out how to use your CRM software, but you got to do it. If you're going to get the benefit from the software, you've got to do it. So one way or another, there are costs, and it's hard to quantify exactly what things like that cost. Like 4 to 7, that sounds like, yeah, maybe reasonable, but I doubt very much you'll be paying that to your CRM software vendor. It's not, that's not the big cost. We always tell people that the cost of your software is not the big cost of using CRM software. And you know that, you've spent probably tens of thousands of dollars figuring out how to do all this stuff, and your CRM software is going to be half of it, maybe at most, something like that, right?
It's reciprocal because you have to make sure, and there's nothing that pisses me off more than managers who are no, don't take the time to learn stuff, or don't allow their staff time to develop and learn new skills, or even have a day off to do stuff like this. Because then when you do those mail merges and you create those, those 500 donor receipts in half an hour, well then use the rest of that day you normally be doing handwriting stuff to give them a call and develop those relationships. So it's investment in, investment out.
Yeah. And I think I was just about to comment on that. Like for us, it was like, you know, we made an additional investment. I mean, come talk to us in a couple months, but we're hoping that we'll get a return on that investment just by, even just having more time as staff to work on other projects or, maybe hoping to create better relationships with our donors, so.
That's the big payoff.
Yeah, and I think, you can't just look at it as a number, you have to look at it as more than that.
Jamie, this question's more for you, but you talked about had the challenges working with the programming department. So the programming department in your organization. How, you said that there's challenges getting them to use the system. What are your expectations? Like how are they using the system?
Well, we're hoping that we can develop templates that are program specific to manage participants. That's one of our stages. Right now, we want our programmers, or like people who run programs, to go back and implement, put in our database and like talk about and put in past participants. So we're really hoping that we can engage them to do that and really show that there's value in that. For us, there's a huge value, so we can start tracking numbers and things like that. But for them, it's like, well, you're taking up my time. So that's one of our biggest challenges with our programmers right now.
Is there not an added value? Like, because I'm very new to this, so I don't know, but like, I'm assuming that they do evaluation of their programming. And so is there ways for that to be integrated into the system? So perhaps we're doing like workshop surveys.
Yep.
And so they can integrate that so that data can be pulled for fundraising stories or,
We're
whatever.
working on that right now.
It is possible.
It's a huge project. So we're working with, it's so complicated. So we're working with a set of consultants that specializes in evaluation, like technology, and then we're also working with our Salesforce consultants to see how we can integrate the two so that all this information can be populated. But I mean, we also run really complicated evaluations and programs, so if it's really something simple, you can download like an application, like a survey app, that's like completely native to Salesforce. It'll plug in all your information. So I mean, everything can be simplified. That's, I think, what we've started to realize. We try to make everything really complicated, but that's not the way to go. It just stresses you out and makes you not want to use anything ever. So we've really gone back and simplified. That evaluation piece is a really complex thing, but it's also involved with a bunch of funders and things like that, so it is going to be a big project. But in terms of like our internals, we're starting to use more like free programs and looking for apps that just make things more efficient and easy for us.
If I can just comment on that though too, I think it's really important, and it's always to respect and recognize how important that data is. And this may be touching on, but it's something I just want to
No, go ahead.
If you're a manager and that's the kind of information you need to be input in your system, insist and demand that your staff do that. This is how you do it. Do it. It's not like, well, I don't feel like doing it. It's so much work. No, shut up and do it. It's like that to be like, I'm not that kind of manager. I was making a point. But I think it's, once you set up those systems to do that work for you, everyone has to be on board to make it work. So don't necessarily like relent if it looks like it's a bit of work, because the work's usually worth it.